repertoire that provides a lot of challenge. I'm working with Randy Seidlinger, violin teacher, many of you perhaps know, Seattle Youth Symphony. When I worked with the classical orchestra there when that was still functioning, we actually took on Beethoven second, took on the finale of Beethoven second. And I remember Randy saying memorably that, she knows as a violinist if she was playing Russian Easter Overture, Rimsky-Korsakov. She said, I can miss notes by the bucket load and nobody would notice. But if I miss one in the Beethoven second, there is a challenge in some of that repertoire. So one, I think there would be an opportunity to do that in the small repertoire. It would also be a place to open up some opportunities for some newer music, to perhaps support student composers, and provide a real kind of elite training scenario, which can also preserve the larger ensemble. Your other option is then to try to do that within the 4 hours of rehearsal that you have for the full symphony. And I think that has some costs, particularly as I guess I would have to say properly, a former trombone player, because I haven't done it much. But being a low brass, I know what it's like to be at the back of the symphony and have 2 movements where you're tacit, and in the other ones you're counting bars for 70 measures before you play. If the conductor stops and wants to go back to the beginning and make you count them all over again. So I would like to see that full symphony preserved and have an environment where those top players can do that. I think also, from what I've learned, there would be hopefully an opportunity to, I think one of the things professionally that those top players are probably going to wind up doing is some pit work, accompanying opera, dance. That may be an environment then where you could support an opera program or a musical theater production, and have those students have that opportunity as well. So I think within the orchestral realm, those are some things that would help, I think, bring in those really top students. Certainly, as I mentioned, those students are also going to be looking at a number of other factors. But as far as things that I think I could do that way. There are a few other thoughts. Besides doing the quality work here, maybe altering programs in the manner that I've described. Obviously, visibility is a big part of it, and I think there's 3 components to that. One is technology. All students are online, and I think one of the things that will need to happen fairly quickly is for the Western Washington Orchestra to get a web page set up with all that information so that those students and parents can go there. I've recently established a Facebook page for the University of New Hampshire Orchestra. This can be a place where prospective students could go look, a place for, just again, an access point for visibility for the program. Even going so far as YouTube. If there's things that are not in violation of privacy or copyright law, these sort of things can help people look at this and go, oh, these are the things that are going on at Western. Certainly have to go out. The second compartment, besides technology, is go out to them, go out to the students. So guest conducting as much as I possibly could. I do a summer festival in the Midwest, a month-long summer festival that draws some strong players. Done the New Hampshire All-State, certainly continue to do all of those types of things that I could find. Clinics within the schools. Love to go with string faculty, or even by myself, but to go out to the schools. Present at conferences, WMEA conferences, All Northwest conferences, to be a presenter. This may be hitting some other students, some of the, maybe not the top A list students that you're talking about, but I think it would all contribute. Also tours, as much as possible, even if it's just a day, but get the orchestra out there. Perhaps the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic, the timing and the funding would work out. The final thing I would suggest is that we have to also bring them here, in addition to going out to them, bring them here. An idea I have is, again, based on something I experienced in my master's degree, a weekend for strings. I know there's a middle school orchestra festival that's going on at Western, which should continue. But perhaps an overnight type of festival, which would be auditioned high school string players coming in, starting a series of rehearsals, supported by wind brass percussion from Western, can come in a final rehearsal to do that. Present a program which can be combined with master classes, with a solo competition for some of those top high school students. Come to Weekend for Strings, and you'll have a chance to be selected as the soloist and perhaps perform, maybe with the orchestra or even with a piano. So I think there's a number of different ways. Some of the ideas, again, as I mentioned, one of the things that attracts me to this is to be able to be in a position where we have discussions and see what's the right fit of all these ideas to have developed that.
Thank you.
Everybody wants a piece of the orchestra, right? The opera program wants a piece of the orchestra, the new music people, the composers want a piece of the orchestra, the students want a concerto competition, a piece of the orchestra, faculty enjoy playing in the orchestra, the choral programs wants to be involved with the orchestra as well. So, and of course then there's musicals and that sort of thing. In those quarters, when you were doing say a full opera production, if that were deciding for them, and you can fit 30 in the pit, what do you do with the rest of the orchestra, the other 40?
Well, if it were not feasible to have, as I proposed, perhaps a separate ensemble, if that's not possible, a model that I'm familiar with from my master's degree days, which I've started to try to implement some at the University of New Hampshire, is to have that large group from time to time break into two subsets. For example, when I was a master's degree conducting student, there was the full symphony orchestra, which presented collaboration with the choral department, did a concerto competition. About twice during the year, it broke out into two subsets. And my advisor, the conductor, took the chamber orchestra. And the other ensemble was an opportunity for us graduate conducting students to have an ensemble actually to work with on a regular basis. So there may be, if there's support with a graduate student or somebody that could work with another subset of the orchestra, rehearse them in tandem and then keep everybody engaged as you're going through. That's one creative way.
So would that take place like in the same 2-hour rehearsal slot or 4 hours in a week?
If it had to. If it wasn't possible to do a separate ensemble, I'm not saying I would be opposed, but I would want to have a good, healthy conversation with everybody about adding a lot of things outside of the regularly scheduled course. I know that's a big concern for us at the University of New Hampshire because, again, the choral program wants to. Every other year we do a large collaboration. We did actually our choral director did a reduction of the Berlioz Today into a single SATBB chorus. So we just did that in December. But still, they want to do heightened creation and bring in, at least a group of strings. I'd be very careful about that territory, about adding the outside rehearsal. If that seems feasible for the students and agreeable to them, I, of course, would be fine with having it outside of that rehearsal time. It can work if it's structured properly within a given time. But as you say, it starts to stretch things to the point where it becomes unhealthy. We have to be careful about that.
Yeah, part of this position also happens to be on the academic side. Could you tell us a little bit about what you might be prepared to do in terms of academic courses?
I have 2 or 3, depending on how you count them, areas that I feel very strong in. One, obviously, being the conducting area. Teaching, of course, graduate conducting would having such a background, having a large background in music education as well, I think there are some areas there as it relates to undergraduate conducting, orchestral methods. That's an area of mine. Also, all the way through theory and forms and analysis has been, if you look at my transcripts, that's always, when I've had the electives, that's where I was kind of what I've gravitated towards. So I feel very comfortable with that. I'm teaching a theory course now, which is designed for music majors, or for music minors and non-majors. But we do, in the course of the first year, get them through, I do get them through fairly securely, an introduction to some chromatic vocabulary, some secondary dominants. With music majors, it can certainly accelerate a little bit. But very comfortable with those beginning levels of theory. Certainly forms and analysis is something I do all the time for myself. And I've been teaching orchestration, which is sort of odd for me because I'm not a composer. And it's actually not something that I had any formal training in myself. But as I was completing my DMA at University of Washington, they have you prepare 15 topics. And you walk into your committee, and they'll pick 2 or 3, and you talk about it and prepare to answer questions. So one of those was to do a comparative review of orchestration textbooks. So I took Berlioz, Rimsky-Korsakov, Adler, Kennan, Piston, of course. So I've been teaching orchestration for the last 3 years and find it very enjoyable, but quite a challenge because it's so hard to make a rule. You know, don't play a note the instrument. Don't write a note the instrument can't play. There's a rule. Outside of that, you're going along principles and have to have a sense of what the instrument's going to do. I think those are. My presentation in a bit of time is going to be more along the musicological vein. My doctoral thesis about Mahler and some of his views. So I'm certainly called upon to do that. I can do that as well.
Not yet.
Not yet.
How do you find working with the differences between working with younger groups with a university or professional groups? I don't know your experience in the professional realm, but in terms of how you rehearse them and how you relate to them and those kinds of things.
Well, certainly there's a huge difference in tone. And vocabulary, you know. I'm not sure how to describe that other than the experiences that I've had with professionals. It's been per service in a ballet situation. It's been get it done in a hurry, make it as clear as you possibly can. So in that case, I come in well prepared, knowing what I want to hear musically. I find that most of the time, if I'm successfully communicating it here, I don't have to say a lot else. So that's my general experience. And obviously with university orchestra or younger students, you have to do a bit more teaching, and that's what I mean in tone. That's obviously not appropriate or relevant in a situation with professionals. So I see it as more a collaborative process when I'm working with. I should qualify that. I also like to collaborate with students. That's where the education that I have. We can talk about that more in a second. But I see it as, with professionals. I'm a professional. The players are professionals. They've done their preparation. I've done my preparation. Let's collaborate. My job is to conduct and be clear and discuss in musical terms what I would like to hear or what I think is relevant to the piece. And then the professionals respond with their ability to collaborate with me and with each other. I want to try to bring that atmosphere as much as I can into the university situation. So I take a very, one of the things I'll spend a lot of time talking about is chamber music approach to orchestral playing, particularly for the string players. Watching, moving, so that again we're collaborating. I'm not controlling, I'm not dictating. I'm helping to shape. Then it makes the term conducting make a little more sense. Conducting current, electricity. I'm not making things happen. So in that way, I don't see a huge separation between the younger players and the professional. It's just a question of how much I have to stop and do some more education. The younger players have to do more.
Speaking of doing both,
Yes.
Gustavo Dudamel,
Yes.
those youth orchestras, and the LA Philharmonic, he seems to be pretty effective doing both.
It's absolutely possible, and my, one of my perspectives on teaching conducting to a graduate student would be that you need to know, and I think professionals know when you know how it's really put together. Not that you're ever going to discuss that with a group of professionals, but I mean, I had some great training in my master's degree and my doctoral degree, but I really learned how to conduct and rehearse working with some of the more advanced high school players at Newport High School and the Seattle Music. Because I learned then how, one of the things I was thinking about for my presentation was sort of my organizational system for how I came to understand how an orchestra works. We're talking about orchestral technique. I learned that from working with the younger students. And it's nice to have that knowledge, and then the challenge with professionals becomes to let go of all that, keep the knowledge, and do your part as a professional.
Given that you're going to be working with university students, how do you go about choosing repertoire?
Very carefully. Very carefully. My general philosophy, as I think I've alluded to already with the chamber orchestra, there's a broad range, and I think we need to at some time cover all of it. We need to do Mozart and Haydn. And we need to do something written in the last 10 years. 20 years. I also have an interest. Language gets difficult here because for some people, contemporary music is anything which is not functional tonality. So baritone. I include that as still fairly mainstream. One of the things that I was very happy to be able to do with my orchestra this year, which is an orchestra with some limits to its capabilities. I was able to do a premiere by a fellow faculty member. He wrote something called 8 Very Short Pieces for Orchestra, and they are in fact short. He set himself a time limit of 30 seconds per movement. And so he took and explored in each movement just a certain sound concept. One was a single C sharp, common violin melody, which passed through different instruments. There was a scale form that he actually started with the lowest range of the instruments in the orchestra and just built this ascending diagonal, we call it. So the students had to wrap their brains around these techniques that they'd never been asked to do before. So what I found is that when we got to the C sharp movement, or another one called a low diad, we had a B and a D at the bottom of the bass clef staff that again passed between the different instruments. They were challenged to play. Obviously, the point of the movement is then the changing of the colors. So then they had nothing left to work on but the beauty of their tone and their ability to sneak in on these tack, swell, and pass it back. That was a challenge for them. That's an important part of an education as well. So first of all, I want to cover all ranges. I want to make sure we're not repeating too many favorite composers too soon. The exceptions I would make to that is there are certain things which are staples that we need to cover. We should probably do a Brahms Symphony, make sure you do at least one in a 4-year time span that you're going to have a student. Beethoven every other year, if you can. For me, Beethoven's the cornerstone, technically, musically. So try to get a range there. The biggest challenge comes, where's the technical limit of the players? Because I can meet that limit, I can maybe go a little bit above, but I'm not going to teach them to be better individual performers with their orchestra repertoire. That's just going to crash and burn. So there might be some beautiful things that we'd love to do, but then we have to look at recruiting and developing the program so we can do elevating.
How do you handle the could be sensitive issues of seating in the orchestra and bowing in the orchestra?
Seating and bowing. Yes, they are sensitive issues. Well, thankfully, in terms of seating, I have colleagues. And we work together on this. So that's healthy in a wide number of ways, but particularly then in terms of from the student perspective, they feel like they're being heard by a broad range, and it's not just one person ruining their life. There can be a discussion as far as, here's what we heard. The other thing as far as seating is that I tend to try to build sections. I tend to try to build orchestras. I don't believe necessarily in ranking players. Certainly you want a strong player in a concertmaster role, but I've had some, quite frankly, really strong players who are not good concertmasters. So I think one thing we have to get clear for the students is that this seating is about the ensemble. It's about the section. It's not necessarily about ranking players. I also would like to tend to rotate things if I can. If you play the finale of Mozart 41, at least at the opening of that movement, your life is a lot happier as a first violinist than as a second violinist, because it's
And
very hard.
Do you apply that also to rotation to the winds and brass as well?
Yeah, again, I tend to be very collaborative, so I would want to work with that, and I would want to make sure that there's a clear policy, so we're not doing it with one section with another. But I think particularly when you're looking at education, yeah, you have to give everybody that experience. If you have a fabulous principal clarinet player, it might be nice to have that person have all of the principal clarinet work and all those solos because I'll know they'll be there. But on a very practical level, what happens when that person leaves? Is nobody else trained, prepared, experienced? Again, it sort of moves away from that ranking idea. So those are again, some sort of thoughts on the seating. Bowing. Bowing is particularly tough. Let's say it can be a particularly sticky subject, not being a string player myself. And certainly I'm sure my bowing would be better if I could pick it up and play it. But even from upper strings to lower strings, there's still some differences. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. What I do right now is I bow the works. But I'm certainly open to conversation about that with those people that I trust to be good concertmasters. I think that's part of being a good concertmaster is how to have my view of bowings, their view of bowings, and how you discuss that in a professional situation. That comes up in professional orchestras all the time. There's going to be a difference in view of how bowings could be done. I also, there is no one single bowing that's right. And I think that can be tough for students to understand. Certainly there are things that are backwards and make it harder. But, there is no universal bowing. Elizabeth Green in her book Orchestral Bowings talks about Peter lump, down, up, down, up, down, up, which is done by, as she says, a professional symphony under a major conductor, and then up, down, dee, dee, dee. You know, so it depends on the level of the group. I might have an idea that something works really well. It's not working. Fine, let's change it. But what we need to do is be able to have conversations about that. And I would certainly, in this situation, seek the input and advice of string faculty on Bowings. You know, it's hard to completely turn over Bowings to somebody else because you have your idea of how you want the phrases, and it may or may not jive with somebody else's vision. But I tend to be a collaborator and a communicator in that sense. Would love to expand my own knowledge with the help of
Moving away from that realm, we spoke a little bit about the various ensembles in town when we had lunch today, and the Whatcom Symphony came up. Can you talk a little bit about how and what you might do to cultivate some of the donors and get some more visibility that way? I know we talked about quality as far as recruitment, or you did. You know, raising the quality, making sure that that's intact. But can you just talk a little bit about what you might do in terms of getting more visibility in the community for our orchestra with donors?
The donors is interesting because it's not something that I mean, other than these donors for scholarships or.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't be like you're out doing the dean's work.
No,
but just in terms of I guess the visibility and just being aware that we have that out there and.
Right. Well, I think, you know, it leads to a question: how is publicity done right now for all university ensembles? Are there posters created by the department that are posted around campus, around the building?
We have some of that. We have a publicity coordinator who's actually we're in the midst of getting a new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have that in place. I'm just wondering if you've had some experience at the school that you're at now in terms of how that, or is it all done?
Well, to be honest, the community that the University of New Hampshire is in is a small town. Outside of the university, I think there's 4,000 to 6,000. So our audiences are
The people who are kind of built there. Yeah.
So no, it hasn't really come up, but certainly, you know, in terms of getting the posters around town, there's a radio station on campus. Can I get on air? Can I talk about? You know, I just did I think they call it the Conducting Fellow with the Allentown Symphony, and there I sat with the music director and the guest artist and was interviewed on the local public radio station. Talked some about the pieces, brought in some clips. If there's the same audience in town that would be going to the Whatcom Symphony Orchestra is probably listening to the local public radio station. There's a possibility, besides the distribution of posters and that sort of thing. Also, where does the Whatcom Symphony, I don't know this, where do they perform?
Downtown Mount Baker Theater.
And the orchestra appear there. Not all the time, but once or twice. If you want to get that out in the community so that people know, maybe not perform there, do some sort of get visibility, outreach that way. But answer radio, traditional publicity materials, and going out to them.
You know, time for one more question.
My colleague, Dr. Van Boer, wanted me to ask my typical question. Being from this part of the country, I'm sure you're aware of the fact, or having spent time here, that we live in the midst of a scenic recreational paradise.
Had not escaped my attention.
So what do you do to take advantage of that?
Take walks.
Not with the orchestra.
No. You're going to understand nature imagery by with 2 kids, It's more in small bits. It's more out for a walk in the park. You know, the 2-year-old needs air. No, so does the 9-year-old. You know, as far as being like an avid mountain climber, I'm not going to claim that. But we do love being out and having been in this area. I certainly think we would be taking advantage of that. If it's sort of a larger question of the balance of life and work, family demands balance. And I'm going to be there for that. In fact, that's one of the things that when I was looking at do I want to apply for the job, I answered my question swiftly with a yes because of the environment that is here and the place that it would be for my family. So in that sense, if I were able to come here, it would be a park for the family, and I'm certainly not going to neglect them. And so I will say family balance is our
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Eppin.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and it was a beautiful building.